Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut this simple bustier flare dress. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So to start this particular pattern illustration, I've gone ahead to mark out all my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, and my shoulder to waistline. My shoulder to bust is 9, my shoulder to under bust is 12, my shoulder to waistline is 17 inches. I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2 and I'll come down by 1 inch. My shoulder divided by 2 is 7 because my shoulder is 14, and I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. Next, I'll mark my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, giving me 7 inches, and I'll draw a straight line there. Next, I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2, place my tape, and I'm going to connect, drawing a straight line. After I'm done doing that, I'm going to go ahead to fold what I have here into 2 this way and mark, and I'll come in by ½ inch. After doing that, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to connect from this point all the way to the upper part of my shoulder and make sure that the curve touches the ½ inch I have at the armhole. I'll just go ahead to mark out my dart for this pattern, and to mark my dart is my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, and I'll just go ahead to mark all the way to my waistline. So after that, I'll go ahead and place my ruler, and I'll be drawing out a straight line all the way to the upper part of my pattern. So after I'm done drawing this out, I'll be marking a dart intake of 1 inch at both sides. I'll mark 1 inch here and go over and mark 1 inch at the other side. So if you're on the bigger size or you're busty, you'll be marking 1.5 inches on both sides of your pattern. That is 1.5 at the right and 1.5 at the left side. So after you're done connecting, after I'm done connecting the lines, I'll go ahead and use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. So the next step I'll take is to go ahead to place my ruler, and I will connect from the bust down to the under bust. And after reconnecting, I'll also repeat this at the other side of my pattern. Now I'll go ahead and go up by 1.5 inches. This totally depends on where you want your dress to start. You can still use 2 inches, but I want to use 1.5. You can also use 2.5. So after that, I'll mark that same nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll be marking 1 inch at both sides of my pattern. And after that, I'll place my curve through, and I'll connect from the bust down to the under bust, and at the other side also I'll be connecting from the bust down to the under bust. So after that, I'll just go ahead and use my marker to connect, and I'll also connect at the other side of my pattern this way. To draw out my neckline, I'll go in by ½ inch after my chest line. So for this part, I'll just go ahead, connect from the side all the way to the chest line of the other side of my pattern this way. So after I'm done marking this out, I'll just go ahead and use my marker to outline this. So after I'm done outlining, next step is I'm going to go ahead to mark my measurements. To mark my measurements at the bust, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. My bust is 33 divided by 4. I have 8.3. Measure the 2 inches dart intake, replace, and add my sewing allowance. So you can use 1.5 to 2.5 inches. So I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake mark, and add my sewing allowance back. My waist circumference is 28 and my under bust circumference is also 28. If you divide it by 4, you're going to have 7 inches. So I'll just mark, measure this dart intake that I have here, and I will replace. So make sure your dart intake is also accurate, and I'll add my sewing allowance back. So after I'm done marking this, I'm going to connect from my bust down to my under bust, and connect from the under bust down to the waistline. So this is what I have for this part of the pattern, and I'll use my marker to outline this, and we'll be cutting this out. So So also remember that this dress has a sleeve, but the sleeve is more of a strap. So you're going to be attaching it when you're sewing this dress, and we are going to be cutting that at the end of the video. So after I'm done cutting out, this is what I have. Next, we'll move over to the back pattern. Over to the back pattern. So I've gone ahead to mark out all my basic measurement just like we did for the front. The only difference for this is that I have a zipper allowance in front of the pattern, because at the back of the dress we have a zipper. And for my zipper allowance, I used 1.5 inches. You can also go ahead and use 2 inches. So now I'll go ahead to just place my tape to indicate that I didn't use a bust dart for this pattern. So after this, I'll just go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and all my measurements will be starting immediately after the zipper line. And after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead and draw out a straight line, and I'll be taking a dart intake of 1/2 inch at both sides of my pattern. Come down by 1 inch from this part, and I'll place my ruler and I'll connect, and also connect at the other side of my pattern. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead and use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. After I'm done outlining, the next step is to go ahead and mark my body measurement. At the bust, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance because there's no dart there. At the waist, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake, I'll replace it and add my sewing allowance. So from here, I'll place my ruler and I'll connect to the waistline. You can also insert your under bust measurement at the back. And after I'm done outlining this, the next step is to come down by 1/2 inch. This is to make sure that the back of the dress does not pop up after sewing it. So after marking that, I'll just go ahead to also come in by 1/2 inch, and I'll extend it all the way up. So that 1/2 inch you came up at the upper part of the pattern, make sure you reconnect it to the chest line. So after I'm done cutting for the back, this is what we have for the back pattern. I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So for the back pattern also, we are going to be cutting out the sleeve for it, or the strap for the dress. So the same measurement you use for the front sleeve is what you use for the back. And for the back, you can go ahead and blend in this dart, or you can just cut it out as one piece. So now for the lower part of this, and we're going to start by marking out our measurement. I'll place my tape and mark 7 inches from the waistline, which will be serving as the hip point. I'll go ahead and rule a line at that point. After I'm done marking that, I'll place my tape starting from where my waist stopped, and I'll mark my full dress length. So for the dress length, I'm using 34 inches plus 1 inch for turn up allowance. So you can use between 1 inch to 2.5 inches for your turn up allowance. So I have a total of 35 inches for the dress length. So this is what I have here, and next we'll be inserting our measurement. Here I'm going to mark the waist circumference divided by 4, and I'll add my sewing allowance. So after that, I'll go ahead to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll be adding my sewing allowance on that part. So to fold your dress, actually you're going to be using your hip circumference divided by 4 plus extra 4 to 6 inches, because we have a flare at the lower part of this dress. So after my hip circumference at the lower part, I added extra 6 inches, and after that 6 inches I extended my line, and you're also going to add your sewing allowance to that. So if you make use of that, you're going to go ahead to put it at the waistline. So for this pattern, I did not add that at the waistline. So from your waist, you're going to connect it all the way to the lower part of your pattern this way, and I'm just going to go ahead to cut it out. So if you notice, this measurement at the hip did not touch the actual hip measurement. If it should touch it, it will be tight on that point and will not give you the free or flare effect you want at this point. So I'll just go ahead and take out a little at the lower part to avoid the skirt being too pointy at that end. So to cut out the back, all you do is to add a zipper allowance. So when I'm always cutting my pattern, I do add a zipper allowance in front. This works better if you're using a pattern paper, but if you're not, after cutting out your dress, go ahead and add a zipper in front while cutting the back. So for the front sleeve, I'm just going to use this as an example. You can go ahead and cut out your desired sleeve measurement. You can use a total of 14 by 3 inches on one side. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial, and see you in our next pattern drafting.